What is up? This is John here at metalaviation.com, and we're going to go over motors. Hopefully you've already gone over that chapter in the book. If not, after this video is over, make sure you go back to that chapter and read it. That chapter explains motors in a lot greater detail than this video is going to, just for the simple fact that motors have somewhat complicated ratings for beginners, and the book does a very good job of explaining those ratings. So let's get started. We're going to start out by hooking up the motor. The motor has 3 wires coming off it. These 3 wires hook up the corresponding plugs on your ESC. Don't worry about color matching. You can plug any wire into any wire on the ESC. Any motor wire can go into any wire on the ESC. Color doesn't matter. The only issue you may run into is once this rig is all hooked up in your plane and you fire it up for the first time, your motor might spin the wrong way. The easiest way to fix that is you swap out any 2 wires. Unplug them, swap them, plug them back in, and your motor should spin the other way. That's how you reverse a motor. Swap any 2 wires on the ESC. Color does not matter. And that pretty much does it for plugging the motor into your ESC. Pretty simple. Where things start to get complicated are the ratings on the motor. Each motor has 4 ratings: kV, voltage, amps, and watts. Let's start out with kV. kV is kind of confusing because kV describes the RPM of the motor, and kV and RPM really sound nothing alike. I really don't know what kV stands for. I used to know, but I really don't care anymore. I think it's kilovolts. But again, I really don't care anymore because I know when I look at the kV rating, I'm going to multiply the voltage of my battery by the kV rating, and that's going to determine my RPMs. Now, that's with no load. And by no load, I mean no prop. Once you put a prop on this motor, you're going to put a load on the motor, which is going to decrease the RPMs of the motor. The only way to truly know how fast this motor is spinning once you have everything set up with a prop is to hit it with a tachometer. If you don't know what a tachometer is, check out the tachometer video where we basically show you what it is and how to use it. But let's get back to kV. All you really need to remember is input voltage times kV equals RPM with no load. So say we have our 3-cell battery, which is 12.6 volts fully charged. We'll just say 12 volts for the sake of argument. We have 12 volts times 1000 kV is going to equal 12,000 RPM. 12 times 1000 equals 12,000. So this motor is going to spin at 12,000 RPM with our 3-cell battery. And as the voltage of this battery decreases as we're flying, our RPMs are going to decrease as well. And that's pretty much kV. Input voltage times kV equals RPM of motor with no load. So let's move on to amps. Your motor should have 2 amp ratings, a burst amp rating and a sustained amp rating. The burst amp rating are how many max amps this motor can pull for a 10 to 15 second period of time. Anything after that, you're risking burning the motor up. Now your sustained amp rating are how many max amps this motor can pull for an unlimited amount of time, meaning you can fly this around for a half hour at that max amp rating and not cause any problems. The reason you need to know your burst amp rating is that's how I match my motor up with my ESC. If you match the burst amp rating of the motor to the sustained amp rating of the ESC, this motor will never try to pull more amps than the ESC can handle, therefore decreasing your chances of burning up the ESC. Now, if you overprop your motor, you're probably going to exceed your burst amp rating on your motor and burn your motor up, but your ESC will probably be okay. Also keep in mind, the higher amp draw of your motor ESC combo, the quicker you're going to drain your battery. So if you're flying park jets, which normally draw a lot more amperage than your slow flying planes, your battery is going to drain a lot quicker. So let's move on to watts. Watts. What are watts? Watts determine how much work your motor can do. The higher the watt rating, the more work your motor can do. Now the only work your motor has to do is spin the prop. So normally the higher the watt rating, the bigger the prop you can spin. Also keep in mind that voltage times amps equal watts. So dropping down to a 2-cell battery may enable you to spin a bigger prop but slower. So you really need to have everything set up correctly for all this to run without burning something up. And really your prop is going to dictate everything. Once you know what size prop and how fast you need it to spin, that's going to dictate your motor, battery, speed control. So you can start to see how all these things work together, and it's really difficult to talk about just the motor without bringing up your battery, speed control as well. So hopefully this video gave you a pretty good overview of motors. Go back and read the chapter in the book if you haven't read it yet, because it goes over all these ratings in detail. Any questions that you have, shoot me an email. I'll get back to you as quickly as possible, answer any questions you might have on motors. And that's going to do it for the motor video here at metalaviation.com. Peace!